Hola amigos, Switch Up Book Club, episode 17. We have Conscious Coaching, the Art and Science of Building Buy-In by Bartholomew. Here's a coach that I really like. He is good at presenting information clear and saliently. I don't think I've ever heard him stutter as an orator, but enough about the author, more about his work in this regard. This is about connecting with athletes. It is not akin to Language of Coaching by Dr. Nick Winkelman, but there's different sides of that, where Language of Coaching was more cueing and learning language and coaching in that regard based on how to teach movement and get the physical qualities out, while also using some cognitive aspects to drive, cueing. We talked about external cueing before, but this is more getting to the heart and soul of the athlete, coaching with them as opposed to coaching to them, to build, as it says, buy-in. And it is an art and a science. There may be references to studies and things of that nature, as well as just being able to read the athlete, the group, and diffuse situations, or just navigate through them a little bit more clear. So within this work, I read this a little bit differently than I normally read a book. And this is a book I put off for a while because I like to think that I have a good pulse on people within my emotional intelligence of what the situation is in a case-by-case basis. So I've been more science focused. I already mentioned Language of Coaching, American football physical preparation. Even with me right now reading the Body Electric as well as Super Training, a lot of dredging through strength and conditioning within the science portion of it, right? Within the organism and how we adapt to stress and stimuli. So this was a good read to get through that. I read this differently. There's 5 sections, and I read it differently, and you'll see why in a minute. So the concern I have with the 5 sections is, number 1, maps and meanings. 2, know thyself to know thy athletes. 3, seek to understand. From pages 79 to 212, we go over all the archetypes. It says it's not an exhaustive list, but it sure felt like an exhaustive list. 4, constructing connections, tools, tenets, and strategies, trust tenets, goes through all those. And then 5, applying conscious coaching to our craft and lives, which is a good segue into you actually using this book as a means of helping your athletes and advancing your coaching skills. So I read sections 1, 2, and 4, and 5, and then finished with section 3. So the idea there is I wanted to know what the book was about and how it ended, and then section 3, because I kind of got some reviews of things, and this book has been out for some time now. Section 3 goes over all the archetypes, and I'll read them to you. The technician, the royal, the soldier, the specialist, the politician, the novice, the leader, the self-sabotager, the mouthpiece, the Wolverine, the free spirit, the manipulator, the underdog, the crusader, the skeptic, and the hypochondriac. That is a lot to go through, and I didn't want any bias of, who's who when coaching. There's great examples within section 3 of Seek to Understand with the Archetypes, where different coaches submit, how they dealt with each archetype, which was really interesting, and I really like the external value of that, or like going out and having coaches talk about the same archetypes that Brett writes about. So I read maps and meanings, know thyself to know thy athletes, talking about self-awareness there. This humidity has got me lately. This humidity has really got me here in California, Southern California. Of all the things to complain about in Southern California, humidity, look at me. So construction, connection, tools, like I said before, the trust tenets, fundamentals, not fluff, educate, and the 3 R's. Relatable, things of that nature. Make them laugh, be authentic, empathy, delivery, persuasion, autonomy. I think I'm pretty decent with that, and I focus more on the science stuff because that's more what I like, and the organism itself. That's what I like. This stuff for me is reading people, and this stuff I think is the most important and trumps everything besides and underneath that, within the umbrella of strength and conditioning, coaching, getting along with people, and having good relationships. When I went through all the archetypes, I think one thing that people misconstrue or confuse, and it says not to do this within here, but you can read, it's not binary. You're either not the technician or something else, right? I think people, depending on the day, depending on their situation at home, and external values as well, that things change. Like I could be, I can grow up and have, and be a royal, but then I have one day where, coach gets me and then I change my ways, and next thing you know, now I'm a crusader, or now I'm a skeptic, or now I'm something else. Things ebb and flow and they change, but also we might have hints of other things as well. So it's not binary in that regard. I think a lot of people reading this, when I heard reviews, before actually doing this, but after reading the book, I think people got caught up in that, like, you're either this or you're that. And I can feel like they're pigeonholing their athletes and thinking that they're something else, and the theory of multiple intelligences, right? People take in information differently and they present information differently, whether it's auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, whatever. So I think that this is a very fantastic thing to relate back to. If you have an issue with an athlete or a staff member or a cohort, and you can come back and say, okay, well, they fall into this category. This is how I could possibly handle it, with the notion that also, there might be some other variables going on. There might be some different things that we can work on within this, right? So the one quote that I liked, and it's a little bit of a long quote, I think it's the longest quote I've had in the last 17, about becoming a conscious coach, is very important when it goes, somewhere in between lies what I call a conscious coach. For a long time, I used the term master coach, but I stopped using it, and after reading a quote from writer Ernest Hemingway, "We are all apprentices in a craft in which no one ever becomes a master," he wrote. Hemingway hits the nail on the head. There is no such thing as a master coach. The best coaches are the best, not because they think of themselves as a master, but because they always want to keep learning. So the term conscious coach was born. Furthermore, a conscious coach is someone who sees the big picture and is able to balance the science and art of coaching, someone who understands all the technical material but is also comfortable adapting it for a given athlete's needs. Conscious coaching is about figuring out an athlete's purpose and matching it with an evidence-based coaching process. It's focused on understanding what really drives our athletes from the inside out, so that there is a shared enthusiasm for what we're trying to accomplish, the level of effort and dedication necessary in order to make it happen, long quote, I told you, and how we can best surmount and adapt to the obstacle that we'll inevitably encounter along the way. Pay close attention to the conscious coach at work, and you'll notice everything they do is strategic and natural, from the way they alter their tone of voice, to how they explain a drill to exercise, or where they stand in relation to an athlete, proximity, to how they hold their own bodies. Last portion, I think this is the most important part that I alluded to earlier. Conscious coaches don't coach to athletes, they coach with athletes. When a conscious coach is at work, you won't find any evidence of an authoritarian relationship. Conscious coaching occurs through a connection. Conscious coaches teach athletes how to teach themselves by enhancing an athlete's awareness of the training method and its desired outcome. That is fantastic. If that was on the back of the book, you wouldn't have to read this unless you really wanted to go into each archetype. So again, I think this is fantastic. This is a great book. I put it off for a long time, although I've had snippets of it read to me or heard or explained. So I do have some history with this book before actually going through it and reading sections 1, 2, 4, and 5, and then coming back and reading 3 and applying them there. So this is a book that I will reference. I think this is one of the books at the top of the list, along with the Charlie Paisley's training method, triphasic. This goes beyond sets and reps, and I think we, as a profession, do not go beyond sets and reps for the most part, and load and volumization, things of that nature, and periodization, which is just a plan anyway. Why don't we start connecting with people and having pulse on what they have going on, increase our emotional intelligence, and it's more fun that way too. Things change. Things are always subject to change. You make a plan, but sometimes you don't stick to it, and it ends up a lot better. And it's about the individual within the group, so that the group works better as well. So there's a macro and a micro approach there. So that's all I got for you guys. 17, Conscious Coaching, the Art and Science of Building Buy-in, Bartholomew.